Hey there, absolutely gospel music fans. I am here today with none other than Allan Hall of the fantastic group Selah. How are you doing today, Allan?
Hey, Chris, doing well. How are you? It's beautiful here in Nashville today. I think I'm hoping fall is finally here, but it's been a gorgeous week.
Yes, absolutely. I'm in the Nashville area too, so I definitely feel it. My kids are loving it. They get to wear their hoodies now to school, so they're all about it. So I'm definitely enjoying the weather too.
I know, this is my favorite time of year. I love it. So I'm glad when the weather starts turning like this. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Allan, we're here today to talk about, I have three things that I want to talk about, first of all. Of course, we have to say happy birthday to Selah, right? So this is 25 years. 25 years you guys have been doing this thing. And so,
That's right.
Yeah, so tell us, for those who aren't familiar with Selah, which I find that hard to believe, but for those who aren't familiar, give us a little bit of a breakdown of the history of the group, and then and so they can know who you guys really are.
Sure. Well, I'll try to do it real quick bullet points for you. Yes, we turned 25 years old this year as a group. We started in 1997. We started recording what would become our first album. Our first album is called Be Still My Soul. We started recording what would become that on Father's Day of 1997. And the original group members were Todd Smith, who's kind of the lead male vocal, kind of a real great, big, powerful pop voice. And then I'm kind of the country tenor. I'm from East Tennessee, so I'm from Knoxville originally. So I kind of bring a little more of a, kind of a mountain country influence to the group. So when I do a lead, it's a little more of some people say I remind them a little bit of Vince Gill, which is a huge compliment. I don't know if I'm quite there, but I mean, but so I'm the when people listen to this, I'm kind of the tenor in the group. And then of course, our original female was Todd's sister. Her name is Nicole Smith, and she got married, and Nicole Sponberg now is her name. So Nicole was with us, and Todd and I met at Belmont University here in Nashville. I left home in Knoxville at 18, kind of had a dream to hopefully, I felt God leading me to Nashville, and I was hoping to be able to do something in music. At first, I was really kind of interested just maybe in production or arranging or, just being maybe a keyboardist out on the road with an artist, and I didn't really have being an artist myself. It wasn't a primary vision for me. But then, so I got to Belmont. Todd came a few years later. We just struck up a friendship, started working together a bit musically, and then, and I was actually playing at a local church in Nashville. And so my music minister, who actually a lot of your readers and listeners would probably know, there's a wonderful vocalist named Cynthia Clausen, who I adore. Cynthia's incredible. Her brother, Tommy, was actually my music minister here in Nashville, and he is an incredibly gifted singer as well. So I loved playing piano over at their church and accompanying Tommy, and he was like almost the male version of Cynthia. Just a fantastic singer. That whole family's so talented. Anyway, so I was playing piano there. Tommy couldn't be there one Sunday, and so he asked me if I had anybody that could just fill. Hey, we're not doing a choir special or anything like that. He's like, can you have someone who can just basically stand up here and just lead, sing into the microphone and be the biggest voice? And I was like, oh, I've got the guy for a big voice. And so Todd came, and they, the folks loved him. And then they asked if we could do a concert like coming up in 2 weeks. And so, you're young and dumb at that time. And we were like, oh, sure. So they wanted us to do a Sunday night concert like 2 weeks after Todd had led. And then as we got more into it, Todd was like, oh, I don't want to do this alone. So he roped Nicole in. And then we were like, man, we don't have time to really write songs or put a band together. So we ended up just we all three had hymns were strong in our background. I learned to play the piano as a child out of a hymnal. And so hymns have been, and I went to a little country church back in Knoxville. And so hymns have been very important to me. Todd and Nicole, their family too, especially, they were missionaries out in Africa, but hymns were a huge background for them. So we just went through, we picked hymns that ministered to us and spoke to our hearts. And we were like, okay, well, if these are touching us, hopefully the crowd, hopefully the audience will like these hymns. So we did piano, vocal, and nearly all hymns that little concert. And then it just kind of spread from there. People were like, hey, can you do that at my church? Can you come do this at my church? And then we had a youth event up in Indiana, and we were nervous. Todd was like, what are we doing? On the way up, I remember him going, man, we're going to sing hymns for teenagers. He's like, are we crazy? And this was late 90s. So,
right.
The big worship movement, hadn't happened yet. Like now, Christian music was very, very, very pop driven and very, all that stuff.
Right.
So you didn't have Third Day hadn't done their offerings yet. We hadn't done our first hymns album yet. That was coming soon. But, so it was a way different climate musically in Christian music. So Todd was like, man, said, I think they're just going to hate us. But I tell you what, those kids, man alive, we, in fact, I remember the highlight of the night, we had to sing His Eyes on the Sparrow twice.
Wow.
We sang His Eyes on the Sparrow, and they were and the whole evening, they were really responding to the songs, but they sat there for a minute, and then they leapt to their feet and just were worshiping, and they were clapping, and they were shouting, and they kept saying, sing it again, sing it again.
Wow.
So we had to sing His Eyes on the Sparrow for them again before we could move on. And the other highlight from that night I'll never forget, I loved, after we were done and we were leaving, getting ready to leave, like a 15-year-old boy came up to me, and he's like, man, he goes, that It Is Well With My Soul song? He's like, that is so awesome. He's like, did you guys write that? and I kind of chuckled, and I said, no. And I pulled the hymnal out. This was a church that back when we all still had hymnals on the back of the pew, you
right.
know. So I pulled the hymnal out for him, and I flipped to it, and I said, man, it's right here. And I said, hey, a lot of those songs we sang tonight, they're right here in this book. And I said, and I'll tell you what, I said, there are so many incredibly deep and beautiful songs in this book. I said it'd be well worth your time to just start diving in and learning them. I said, they're gorgeous songs. They really are. And he was like, well, I sure enjoyed hearing them tonight. So that was a great night. But all that to say, Todd's parents had come to that, his mom especially, and she was like, y'all, this is something I think really kind of special. She's like, what if you just put these down? And like I mentioned before, they were missionaries in Africa. They've been missionaries for a long time out in Africa. And so her idea was for us to record these hymns, and they would give them as just a gift to like some donors. Like if the donors hit a certain support level for their ministry, they'd get this free disc of, free CD of hymns sung by two of the Smith children and a friend of theirs playing piano. And that was the original idea for what became eventually our first album. So she gave us a little bit of money. Her father had just passed away, and she gave us about $2,000. And we went to the studio with I had three other roommates at the time. You know, when you're young and broke, trying to make it in the music industry. So I was living with four guys, and all of us were involved in the music industry in some capacity. A couple of them were songwriters. One guy was learning to be an engineer. So I told Todd, when Todd said, hey, my mom wants us to do this, I said, one of my roommates is an engineer. He's just learning, but he was just beginning learning Pro Tools. This was like, again, like mid-90s. So,
right.
And so I said, let me talk to him and see if maybe he could engineer this for us. And then I talked to him. His name's Jason Kyle Setvite, who is still 25 years later our co-producer and engineer and all that stuff. So it ended up being a really long relationship with him. But so he was like, man, he goes, yes, I'd love to do this. And he said, let me talk to where he was interning at a studio on Music Row. And he said, let me talk to the studio owner and let me just see what it would cost and all that, because we didn't have much money, so we were like, man, that's going to be the trick, is to get into a studio for a good price. Well, the owner was like, hey, he said, you know what? He said, I'll let you guys do it for about $30 an hour. He said, but you'll have to work around all the AX. So we recorded at 2 in the morning, right, or we'd start at 10 at night, just all around the big schedule, the big acts. So, but that was a wonderful gesture that he did. And of course, after we were signed to Curb and all that, we kept recording there because he'd been so good to us, and we were happy we could actually start paying his regular budget price. His regular prices, And we were like, hey, we're going to repay you by actually being an A-list act in your studio. And he laughed and laughed. But all that, so it really, looking back now, I see how God really lined it up. Putting me with those guys I was living with, putting me with Jason, who was an engineer. Jason was interning at this studio where the studio owner was very gracious. And so we ended up recording on Father's Day of '97, like I said. I always call it our little record. It was piano vocal. Nicole was already signed to Curb Records in Nashville as a solo artist. She'd gotten signed in '95, but she was really looking at pop stuff. And so she gave Curb had given her permission to do this little album for her parents, and she gave a copy to Mike Curb, and then he took it home overnight and listened to it after we'd finished it in like June or early July of '97, and he called her like the next day, and he said, hey, listen, he's like, I think this is really special. He said, I've played this thing all night. He said, I think it's really special what the three of you have. And he's like, I'd like to sign you all as a group. He said, I'll keep you as a solo artist as well. He's like, but I'd like to sign you and your brother and your friend as a group. Wow. And she called the next day, and I was working at a job. I had many jobs at that time, just trying to keep enough free time to where I could pursue any musical opportunity. And I was working at an accounting firm, which ended up teaching me a lot about the music business. It was a music business accounting firm, but I wasn't loving the job. And I'll never forget walking home. It was a rough day at work. And I walked home, and part of me just been like, Lord, man, is anything ever going to open up? Or, I want to make sure this isn't just my own desire, that I'm trying to make it musically in this town. I want to make sure that I said, I feel like you've put a call on my heart to be here. And it was almost 10 years to the day after I'd moved to Nashville. I got to Nashville in 1988. And so this was almost 10 years. So this was late 97 or mid 97, and Nicole called and said, hey, she said Curb Records wants to sign us to a record deal. And I just was like, wow. So Nicole was with us for 8 years. And then Amy Perry, a lady named Melody Crittenden, actually. Nicole got married, and her husband was a minister. They wanted to start ministering together. So at the end of 2004, New Year's Eve was Nicole's last concert with us. And then for about 6 or 7 months, we had a wonderful lady named Melody Crittenden come in, who we'd known at Belmont. And Melody had a country deal in the late 90s, early 2000s herself. And so she came in, so she was already a seasoned artist. She knew everything. It wasn't somebody brand new raw that we'd have to train. And right. She had a beautiful voice, so she stepped in for us. And then she wanted to. She was doing so much session work in Nashville and didn't have to be traveling. And she and her husband, about 6 months in, they were trying to start a family. And she came to Todd and I and said, "Hey, I think I just need to be home more." And so we totally understood. So it was a very, very amicable parting. But then Todd and I auditioned about 15 ladies. This would have been mid 2005, probably around August 2005. And so Amy Perry came in about the middle of that group. And from the first time I heard her, I was like, oh, it's kind of like my heart leapt. Because, like we had been, and Todd, I actually had some moments, Todd and I both did, because Amy, we had about 15 ladies lined up to audition. And Amy was like number 8, I think, 8 or 9. And I remember no one was really filling the slot. And I remember Todd and I talking, and I said, and I remember going to my pastor and just saying, hey, I wonder if God's trying to tell us, this chapter of our lives, the Selah chapter is over. We had a good little run, and, maybe it's time to move on and look for other things. I said, and my pastor was so kind. He was like, he said, Allan, he said, I know what your all's music has done for me personally. He said, I think you would feel a definitive closing of that door. He said, if God was saying, hey, yes, it was a beautiful time of life, but it's time now to change and move to other things. He said, I think you would feel a definitive, like, yes, this is finished. This work is done. Let's move on to something else now. And he said, if you're not feeling that, he said, just keep praying and praying, and just keep sensing that. And he said, and I'll be praying for you guys too. So, so we had, like I said, that was probably around audition 4 or 5. There were a few more, and then about 8 or 9 ladies in, here came Amy. And the first time I heard her singing, kind of my heart, it honestly felt like my heart leapt a little inside. And it really did feel like God was saying, this is the girl. This is the one. And from Amy's side, she had come to, she told us later, she didn't know who Selah was. She didn't know our music. And we had just had You Raised Me Up the year before, which is our biggest song. She just didn't know our music and didn't know us. And I'd reached out to a mutual friend of ours. I'd reached out to a professor of mine at Belmont. And this professor sang with Amy at their church in Nashville. And I asked my professor, her name's Janet Kenyon. I said, Janet, do you know of anyone that we could maybe, that you think's a fine singer that could, handle Todd's vocals to be able to, match that intensity and that quality? And she said, listen, there's a girl that sings in my church on the worship team. Her name's Amy Perry. She said, you need to sing with her. So then she sent Amy over, and as soon as we heard that, as soon as we heard Amy singing, I was like, oh, yeah. And Todd was like, wow. And then, but Amy had said, when Janet had told her, hey, I want you to, it's a group called Selah. My friend, my former student, friend Allan's in it, and I'd like you to, and Amy was like, okay, I've never heard of them, but I'll go home and listen to some of their stuff. And her husband pulled up one of the albums for her, and she was like, oh, my goodness. She said from her end at first, it was like, well, this might be a nice stepping stone to a solo career or something like that. But she said, after I heard your Hiding Place album, she said, I just wanted to be in the group. She said, I knew that's what I needed to do, and I wanted it. And so we auditioned Amy. That was in mid-2005, and she has been with us ever since. So what is that going on? What is this, 22? So is it, 17 years, I guess, now?
Wow.
And so people think of her still as, quote, the new girl, even though she's been with us the longest girl of all of them.
Yeah.
So it's funny, but she's fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny. I still think of that too. And when you put it in terms of how long it actually has been, yeah, she's been there the longest. But and this will date myself a little bit as well. Is I remember working in the Lifeway Christian stores back when that first record dropped, and we couldn't keep it on the shelf. Be Still My Soul. Everybody wanted it. That one little store in Chattanooga probably sold 500 copies of that record.
Man, yeah.
And that thing just flew off the shelf. But I've been following you guys, the whole time. And of course, my favorite, if I have to recommend a record, for folks, it's always Bless the Broken Road, the duets album. I love that one. And of course, You Deliver Me, and You Amaze Us, of course, are some of my favorites as well. But but another thing we want to talk about is, of course, you've got your Greatest Hymns, Volume 3. About that. So tell us a little bit about that record.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hey, real quick before I get on that, you were saying Bless the Broken Road, duets album. Two of my very favorite tracks that we've ever done are from that. I love the duet we did with Kim Hill on All My Tears.
Oh, yes.
Kim just sounds fantastic on that, and I love that song. It's so mysterious, and it's a great song. And then my other one, I finally got to, like I mentioned earlier on, Cynthia Clausen has been a huge influence on me, and I loved her so much. And, of course, Tommy, her brother, I played for here in Nashville for a little time at the church. But I finally got to meet Cynthia and strike up a friendship probably in the late 90s, I think, with her. But then we finally, my very favorite hymn she ever recorded is Softly and Tenderly. She's kind of associated with that hymn in particular. But so for the duets album, I called her and I said, would you do me the honor of singing? I said, I've made this arrangement of Softly and Tenderly. I said, really, for you. And I was like, would you do the honor of singing with us? And I didn't know if she'd say yes or not. And she's like, absolutely, Alan. So my very favorite moment on that album, it closes with Softly and Tenderly, a duet with me and Cynthia. And it's just, that's my favorite track on there. And I love the Kim Hill, but I loved that album. It was fun to do that. It was different because we got to do duets with a bunch of different artists. And I tell you what, when we sang with Jason Crabb and Adam Crabb on Ain't No Grave, and Todd and Jason tearing it up, loved it. So I was going to mention that track. I love that you love that. But on to the next one. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I love talking about records that are meaningful to everybody. And that one meant a lot to me. As a listener of Christian music, and of course, Glory with your duet with Nicole Nordeman was my favorite cut on that one.
Yes.
But
and she wrote that song specifically for us. We approached her and we said, hey, we're like, would you want to sing on a duets album we're doing? She's like, absolutely. And we're like, would you do us the honor of? We're like, could you write an original song for that? And she was like, oh, she said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we were like, and I told her, I said, write with Todd's voice in mind and Amy, your voice and all this stuff. And I said, just go ahead and do your thing. And I thought she delivered a beautiful song. It was such an honor we love her dearly. We started around the same time in the late 90s.
Right, yeah.
And so we've felt a kinship with her for many, many, many years now. So
that's
it's been great to see her career develop and everything like that, go on to the great stuff that she did. But hey, Greatest Hymns 3, yes. We're so excited because on October 14th, we had a wild hair idea this year, and we thought, well, it's our 25th year. We want to celebrate. We're like, and the fans have been so good to us for a quarter century. We're like, what can we do other than just a new album? And we were like, well, let's give them more music. So we decided to do two. We thought, and ended up being a little nuts idea maybe, but we made the schedule. It was very intense by the deadline, and we were like, oh no, are we going to do this? Are we going to make it? Are we going to? And but it ended up working out. So we have two albums coming out on October 14th. And one is our first Christmas album in 20 years. That's called At This Table.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can touch on that in a little bit. But the reason we thought it's kind of two anniversaries this year. The Selah's 25th, so the Greatest Hymns Volume 3, I had the idea of, I went to Todd and Jason. Like I said, Jason turned into our longtime co-producer, still engineers our stuff. And I said, well, what do you guys think about? I said, over the years, a lot of people have asked if we would ever do an album like Be Still My Soul again. Now on each album, there's a bunch of styles on each album. There'll be some piano vocals or piano strings or whatever, but then there's more full band things. We love just a variety of styles on each project, within each project. But a lot of fans had asked over the 25 years, they said, do you think you'll ever do an album again that's nearly all piano vocal and just nearly all hymns or classic Christian songs like Be Still My Soul? And I told Todd and Jason, I said, you know what? I said, I think this would be the perfect time for an album like that. I said, to kind of cap off our first quarter century in the Christian industry. I said, you know, that God has allowed us to keep going this long, and the fans have supported us for this long. You know, I remember after Be Still My Soul came out in the 90s, I remember praying that it would be successful enough that we'd get to do album number 2, you know? And so here we are 25 years later, and I'm still just so thankful. We all are, all three of us, just thankful. And every time we're like, man, are the folks going to like this music? Are they going to like this? You know, can we keep, hopefully we'll keep doing it. And they've always just shown their support and their love for us. And they write really sweet messages about how the songs we've chosen have helped them through hard times. And that means the world to us. So all that to say, I was like, yes, to cap off this first 25 years, to kind of bookend the first 25, what if we do an album almost just like Be Still My Soul again, with using Be Still My Soul as the model? Let's keep it nearly all piano vocal, nearly all hymns, or maybe a few classic Christian songs. And that's what we did. And man, I tell you, it was really sweet making it, because it just brought up a lot of memories, and it was real simple. And many times while we were recording, Todd would look at me and he'd say, man, he said, this feels like doing it the very first time, doesn't it? It's that long ago. And I was like, it does. And so it's just real simple, sweet album. But yes, so there's 13 songs on it. We wanted to give people a lot of songs, and it's a good mix. Like I said, it's nearly all hymns, but like on Be Still My Soul, you know, we have, you know, we love classic Christian music, and we love modern music too. But like, so, you know, on Be Still My Soul, remember we had a Larry Norman song, and we had a few things like that. So on this one, Todd does an incredible version of Russ Taff of Praise the Lord.
Wow.
Russ, the Imperials. So it's a piano vocal, and Todd, it's just Todd, and it's amazing. And so we have an Imperial song. We do a Twyla Paris medley. We took 4 of her songs that we love and kind of put a medley together. So there are some contemporary things on there. But then, yes, we have, we go through it. We have, like, just some good old hymns like Rock of Ages, which I can't believe in 25 years, us being a primarily hymns group, I thought we had recorded Rock of Ages, and we hadn't, you know? But, like, and what made this fun, too, is when we decided to do this, we got on all of our socials, and we asked the fans. We were like, hey, what hymns would you guys like to hear us record? We said, you know, y'all been asking for this album. We would love for you to reach out to us and let us know, you know. So on the post we did that on, we got over 1,000 suggestions.
Wow.
People were like writing in saying, hey, sing this, you know. And so we took those really seriously, and we kind of tabulated them all. And then we of course, you know, we threw in our own favorites, and you see what kind of fits you, you know. But the most requested one by far was that beautiful old song, The Love of God, that beautiful hymn. Wow. And so that's on there. So and I think that one turned out really well. The orchestration turned out really pretty. Todd sings it just beautifully. I mean, of course, Amy and I chime in with harmonies, but he really does a showcase on it. We do that pretty old hymn, This Is My Father's World, and we do, I thought we'd done Blessed Assurance. Again, you know, you look back over 25 years, and you're like, did we sing that? Did we not? You have to go back and look on your albums. And so we've got Blessed Assurance on there. Now, my favorite track, it's another old classic. From 1970, kind of during the Jesus People movement. Now it's as old as I am. I'm 52. I was born in 1970, so I just turned 52 this past August. But my favorite track, I think, on the album is a song called, which I think older folks will know, but it's called Put Your Hand in the Hand. Do you remember that old?
Yeah.
Put your hand in the hand of the man who stilled the water. So I'd heard Anne Murray do that. I grew up here, and she was actually the first one to record that. Now, most people have probably heard there was a rock group called Ocean in the early 70s, had a big hit with it. And then Elvis Presley, of course, had recorded it also in the early 70s. But it was part of that whole Jesus People movement, those songs coming, you know, that Larry Norman was a part of and all of that. But it's just such a great song. And I tell you what's awesome is I've had some younger folks that have heard the album. They don't know that song originally. Like, you know, I think it's going to hit a nostalgic button for people my age and older, you know, maybe late 40s as well. But we've had a number of younger folks that have heard it, like even my nephews, and not just family, other people, like in their 20s, and they're like, oh my goodness, they're like, I can't get that song out of my head. They're like, it's so catchy. I'm like, it is, isn't it? And in fact, we were just shooting a video for it the other day, and the crew was all young. They're all in their 20s, and they were all saying that too. They were like, "Oh my goodness!" They're like, "This song is just so catchy." And I asked them, I said, "Now, have your parents played that for you, or have you ever heard this song before?" And they're like, "No." They're like, "But we love it." So I'm hoping that it'll get some really good response. I think that's a good cross-generational song. Hopefully the young folks that don't know it at all will love it, and then hopefully it'll be just a sweet memory for the older folks who hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one other thing we want to talk about, obviously, and I'm super excited about this because, I've had a chance to listen because, I'm lucky enough to get advanced copies of these things, but your Christmas record, Rose of Bethlehem, was one of my absolute favorite Christmas records. So I was so excited to see you guys finally doing another Christmas record. And so tell us a little bit about the new Christmas album.
Yes. Well, and believe it or not, that was the reason so we had the hymns one, and we're like, oh my goodness. Then we thought, let's go crazy and try to give them a lot of music. And we thought, well, what would make sense? And we were like, you know what? We realized this year, this is 2022, Rose of Bethlehem is 20 years old, and
wow.
I can't believe it. You know what I mean? That album came out 20 years ago, and we thought, well, you know what? That's a nice number. We're like, how about we say, hey, it's a 20th. We have not done a Christmas album in 20 years. So we're like, it's the 20th anniversary of Rose of Bethlehem. We're like, so let's celebrate that by doing another Christmas album. And funnily enough, Amy has been with us all this time. We don't have a Christmas album with Amy on it. Like, right. This is, when we do our Christmas tours and stuff, she's singing songs from Rose of Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. And so people have been asking for a while, too. They're like, hey, you're going to do a new Christmas album that has Amy. And so we thought, man, well, now this just seems like the right time also. So really excited about this one, too. And it's a good mix of, just traditional carols, of course. And it's very much, I think, in the vein. It's not exactly like Rose of Bethlehem, but you have the classic Selah tracks of piano and vocals and strings, and there's some nice orchestrations, and then you have some full band tracks, like there were a couple on Rose of Bethlehem, like Light at the Stable, and Joy back on that first album. Right. So we have some full band tracks, but there's some nice originals, and then one of them I loved. I'd heard this song. It's called "The Night That Love Was Born," and I'd heard a group sing it. They had opened for us. Right when we were beginning, I think in 99 or 2000, just a couple of years into our career, we had this show out at Opry Mills Mall in Nashville, and this kind of an acoustic group opened for us, and I loved their music, their sound, and they had a CD there to sell, so I got one of their CDs, and there was one Christmas song on this. The rest of the CD was just other good songs, but there was one song that was a Christmas song, and I just kind of filed it away. Like I always carry in my head, I'll put and I'll usually write it down too. But I've got a list of songs over decades that I've heard to be like, oh, I think that'd be great for us to record one day. Uh-huh. And so I've always kept this list, and eventually, you kind of see which songs make sense on an album project and which don't. Sometimes you record something, and when you're listening to everything in the playback, you're like, you know what, that song really kind of sticks out, or it really doesn't fit. And so either you save it for another day, or it ends up on another album, or nowadays, of course, streaming, you could release a standalone single. But right. So there's just that whole process. Even after you record a bunch of songs for a record, some of them just may not end up fitting the vision of the album or something like that. But I always carry a bunch of songs with me, and it ends up, hopefully working out. So there's some albums, like even on like You Deliver Me or You Amaze Us, I'd reached back maybe 20 years to pull an original song that somebody had sent. And so this was a song that I'd known since the late 90s, and I've never heard, apart from them, and we were diving in trying to find out, but I've never heard another group record it. I could be mistaken on that, but we really looked around and tried to find it, and couldn't find any other version of it. So hopefully, so it is, I think, a true original. But it sounds a little more. I'm doing the lead on it, so it's got a little more. I roped Todd and Amy into doing a little more country harmony on it. So I really think like it could be played on country Christmas playlists. Uh-huh. I think and country Christmas radio. But so the Christmas album, yes, it's our first one in 20 years. It's the first one that has Amy on it. Full Amy Christmas album. And she sings some beautiful songs, and like we've got Todd. Todd growing up in Congo, so he did. We usually have a Congolese flavored song on each album, mm-hmm. So he kind of did that to Joy to the World this time, and we did like the first Noel. But the title track Amy found. The title track is called At This Table. That's the name of the album, is At This Table, and then subtitle the Christmas album. But Amy brought the title track to us, and the title track just really talks about at this table, everyone, we all know, everybody listening, all of us, no matter who we are, families can sometimes, family can sometimes be a tricky thing, a difficult thing. And, you love each other and sometimes you want to kill each other, But, so holidays, I know for some families can be, maybe a little bit of a, just a tenser time maybe, or a little rougher time for certain members or folks, but I love the song, and Amy brought it. She said because she grew up in a household with foster care. Her mom foster cared a ton of people. Now Amy's on that own journey herself, and so she has and even they ended up adopting a number of the foster children that they fostered. So Amy has a very diverse family, very diverse opinions, all of that. And so, but she said, I love this song. She said because it says, at this table, everyone is welcome. At this table, you can speak your mind. At this table, mercy has a seat. And so it's just like everyone is well. And she said her parents always modeled that for her very well. She said no matter what the family was going through or who was fighting with who or arguing with who, she said their parents said, at our table here in our home, they were like, all of you children are always welcome, and we can always work through things. Wow. And so it's a beautiful song that really it really articulates that really well. And so when she brought that to us, she's like, hey, I'd love to throw this on the Christmas album. She said, I know it's not a particularly, like it doesn't mention Christmas specifically, but she said, I love the sentiment of, she said, I think it's perfect for Christmas because of family gathering and having everyone at the table, maybe even when things aren't perfect, because no human being's perfect, no family is perfect. And even in the hard times, though, we still need to love each other and work through things. So I think it's a great song, and I thought it was a great way to kick off the Christmas album.
Well, that's awesome, Allan. We'll leave us with one more question before we hop off. I know you probably got a busy day ahead, and we've already kept you long enough. But I've been interviewing artists a long time in all genres of music, and there's one question I've asked for the last 20 years, and I want to keep asking it, and that is just simply, what is God teaching you?
Oh, what was that, Chris? You cut out. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
what was? I got most of it. It was just, what was the actual question?
No problem. The question is, what is God teaching you?
What is God teaching you? Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you want me kind of just from my own perspective, or maybe from the group, or?
Yeah, whichever you prefer. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Whatever you think you would be best to share.
Okay. Well, for me personally, I think he's been teaching me, especially as I'm aging. I'm early 50s now, and when we started Selah, I was in my 20s, and so the road starts taking a little harder toll on you, on your body. Lack of sleep and all the travel and stuff, and you don't, in your 20s and 30s, like that's you can get 2 hours of sleep a night and bounce back and keep going and going, and 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and so that's getting a little harder now. So travel is getting a little harder. Obviously we love what we do, but I'm becoming more of a homebody as I get older. But I think what he's been teaching me is, patience and just his faithfulness. And what I mean is, like, as far as his faithfulness, like, I look, and every time I think this year we're celebrating 25 years, my mind is blown. I could have never, God has made just so many dreams of mine that I had as a kid and hoping, and as a teenager before I started my journey in the music industry, and feeling that call into that. And it's a very difficult industry to break into, and then to actually make a living in it, especially nowadays, is very difficult. So I think his faithfulness really is, actually that's probably more of what he's showing me, is his faithfulness. Like, here we are 25 years later. He's always provided. He's opened up so many doors and opportunities that I could have only dreamed of, and it's been amazing. Like, we've played the Ryman Auditorium, which, me being a country boy, was awesome. I remember headlining our first show there, and that was always a dream of mine. And we've played Carnegie Hall. We're going to play Carnegie Hall next year again, which is a dream come true. I was a classical piano major at Belmont. And so that side of it has been amazing. But, we've gotten to work with so many great people in the industry. I got to do a duet with Dolly Parton on Rose of Bethlehem, which, I'm from East Tennessee, so I'd always hoped and dreamed to meet Dolly. And he let us, we got to spend an hour with Billy Graham in his home. And just, a few years before he passed away. And that was just an honor I couldn't believe. I used to watch him with my family. We would gather and watch him on television on the Crusades, and And I was like, man, I love that guy. And even when we started the Christian industry, you know, we didn't really have, you know, weren't able to meet him or anything. I mean, this never happened. Mm-hmm. And then we started working with his daughter, Ann Graham Lotz, and then she called out of the blue one day while we were doing a conference and said in the afternoon and said, hey, I know y'all are singing tonight, but do you want to come up and meet Daddy this afternoon? And so to spend an hour with him was just unreal in his own home. And again, this is a little guy that I had no experience in music, you know, in Knoxville. I mean, apart from me, what I mean is I had no family members. No one else in my family does music. No one does any poetry or painting or anything like that. It's just been me. So it's been a little bit of a lonely journey, but I just kind of kept plugging at it by myself, and then moved to Nashville and was very thankful to meet a bunch of other musicians and kindred spirits. And then God just kept leading. But like I said, also too, He taught me patience, because I got to Nashville in 1988. We signed our record contract, the final version of the record contract, in 98, so almost 10 years to the day. Mm-hmm. And then so that was, you know, that was a long, and it looked like certain things would come close. You know, before Selah, like I was working with other groups, and it looked like certain things would happen, and then it would not happen. Something would happen, it would kind of fall apart. Mm-hmm. And so it was just, He really saw me through disappointment. I mean, there's many nights of tears and sweat and work and just hoping and praying and wondering. And again, like always testing myself, just saying, Lord, please let me know. You know, by year 7 here in Nashville, and year 8, and you know, when nothing solid was really happening musically, I kept praying. I was like, Lord, please show me if this is not the way, if it's only my own human desire that I want to be in music. I said, I think you've given me the talent for it. I was like, I think you've given me the heart for it, that I want to reach people and help them with it. I was like, but if that's just me, please show me so that I can change and go where you want me to go. And it's all this time, it felt like He was just saying, wait, just wait for me, wait. And then, of course, by year 9 and 10, Selah started happening, and here we are 25 years later. So He's shown me faithfulness, and He's taught me the value of patience. So sorry that was so long-winded.
No, it's fine.
To boil, you can boil it down however you need to, but bottom line, yes, He has shown me faithfulness for all this time, through my whole life, and patience. And even still now, when I get nervous about something or worried and I start to doubt Him about something, I have to calm myself down and say, Allan, He has poured out blessing upon blessing on you that you've never deserved. And it's like, and don't you think that why do you think He would stop that? You know, it's like He's a good Father. And God, and everybody who reads this or listens, I want them to know, you know, God is on our side. I mean, Jesus is on our side. He's a good Father. Now, that doesn't mean our lives are going to be smooth and perfect all the time. And yes, hard things will come to us. But God is with us. He's not against us. God is for us. Who can be against us? Right. So that's what He has shown me all these years. He is our strength and our rock. He is our refuge. He is when I am broken and hurting and in tears. He is the rest I go to, and He's the one to trust in. And I always tell that to myself. It's like, Allan, God is for you. God is for all of us. God is for those. He's for His children, and a father does not hurt his children. You know, He loves His children.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great, Allan. We have loved getting to catch up with you so much. I would be a poor fan if I didn't mention that you have put out a couple really great solo records in your time as well. Of course, my favorite is House of a Thousand Dreams. I love that record. I
appreciate that.
Yeah, and so of course people can catch that stuff on streaming services as well. But the big thing, of course, is get those new records when they come out next month. I guess at this point, today's the last day of September when we're talking, and they're great stuff. I highly recommend them. And before we go, how can people reach you guys, Allan?
Oh, yeah. Well, we're on all the socials. Our website is selahonline.com, and Selah is spelled S as in Sam, S-E-L-A-H. It comes from Psalms. Some people always ask what Selah means. They think it means to pause and reflect, or a musical pause. It has a bunch of different connotations in Hebrew, but it comes from Psalms. That's where it comes from, and it's S-E-L-A-H, so Selah Online. And just on Facebook, you can I think we're maybe Selah Music on Facebook if you do the search bar, but you can just go to Facebook and search Selah. And also we're on Instagram, And Todd handles most of this side because, like I said, I'm becoming a middle-aged man, so I'm not as up on the socials. I'm on Facebook, and I can do email and all that stuff. But we're on TikTok, which, Todd understands that better than me. We do TikTok. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And Chris, real quick, I wanted to let you I meant to tell you this, too, about the new albums. We're doing a little different thing because we really want to support our Christian bookstores and all. Today, September 30th, the way we're releasing this is Put Your Hand in the Hand. We are releasing that one single from the album digitally. So that's going to be on all the streaming services today. Is Put Your Hand in the Hand.
Awesome.
But the only way, if people like that song, through the end of the year, the only way that everybody can get all the songs, if they enjoy that one, is that they'll need to order a CD, and they can do that at our website or Amazon or wherever. But we hope and pray that they will go to their local Christian bookstore, if there's one around them still, and they'll go buy it there and support the local Christian bookstores. But we decided to release these two physically first. And then they'll At This Table is going to be the lead single from the Christmas album. That will be available digitally in November. So those are the only two songs digitally this year. The album won't be up for streaming yet, but starting next year, they'll be able to start getting the digital stuff. But
sure.
if anybody reads this and they want the full albums right now, they'll need to order a physical copy. So we wanted to try to support
awesome.
Christian bookstores as much as possible.
Well, and that's great because my full-time job, Allan, is I actually sell to independent retailers books and Bibles. So that means a lot to me that you guys are still supporting the independent Christian retail stores and of course, Mardell's and all those. So that means a lot absolutely. To me as well. So I'm glad to see Selah still supports that. So listen, I won't keep you any longer. We've been on here a long time. So we are so excited. I finally got to talk to you guys and feature you guys on the site. And so we look forward to hearing buying those physical copies, and then you guys can get the digital ones later. So we appreciate you taking the time, Allan. We hope you have a great day.
Oh, man, Chris, thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.